presentation. We have Alpert Engels, who is the chairman of the board of coordinators for the Smart City Lighthouse projects, and us from the city of Rotterdam. Ramon Ferri from the city of Valencia, the smart city officer there, who is also with EIP-SCC and OECD, etc. He will explain as well, present the things. And then finally, we have Nadia Sultanova, who is the director of digitalization, innovation, and investment unit at Sofia municipality. So I suggest to start with the presentation. So first is Bart from OGC. So I propose that he shows his video. Oh no, sorry, my mistake. Before that, I wanted to present to you some, because I was asked by the other speakers to present to you the funding opportunities within the different European funding opportunities. When we look at the different instruments that we have the Horizon Europe, which is the continuation of Horizon 2020, and which is about research and innovation. Within it, there are different pillars, and within different pillars, there are different clusters. So here we're looking at Pillar 2, which is Global Challenges European Industrial Competitiveness. Within it, in Cluster 4, which is Digital Industry and Space, the topics of smart city, smart energy, smart mobility, and all the other smart areas are covered widely in the different proposed intervention areas. I'm not going to read them, but 6G, sustainable, efficient, and green radio systems, and so on and so on. You see the edge system, the cloud, etc., artificial intelligence, robotics, and so on. So in all these areas, if you look, they have application areas which are linked to the smart cities, communities, and similar. Cluster 5, which is about climate, energy, and mobility, you'll find a number of intervention areas. From there, also a number of calls that have been foreseen in the communities and cities, mobility, energy, etc. For sure, there is a call within it which is dedicated, actually a couple of calls that are dedicated to urban digital platforms, interoperability within cities, etc. Then we have the partnerships, which are built for people, focused on buildings, on the built environment, and an urban transition, which is focused on the cities. And we have the new instrument, which is the Mission, which is a cross-cutting instrument. It's being kind of shaped as we speak, there are several of these, and the one that is interesting for us is climate neutral and smart cities, where they have presented already a plan. I don't present everything that is inside this plan, but what is important is that they plan to support 100 European cities in their systematic transformation towards climate neutrality by 2030. And of course, digital has a lot to do with this transformation. It's very, very widely covered in this. Another instrument that goes in parallel to the research innovation instrument, so Horizon Europe, is the Digital Europe program for, and then the part for smart sustainable cities and communities is represented on this slide because it covers a lot of areas. It's everything digital, but this part these are the topics that touch upon and cover the cities and communities. So one is the deployment of urban digital platforms. On top of this, running AI services, creating a smart communities data space with the data coming from these platforms, also running services on these data spaces on the European level, again, AI-based. Then we are also rolling out digital twins powered by AI and the data coming from platforms. And then we are allowing also small stakeholders, especially, to test and experiment with AI in special facilities that will be distributed around Europe. There will be big facilities per area, and there are several of them focused on smart cities and communities. And within them, of course, we have as topics mobility, energy, environment, etc. Then we have the Connected Europe facility for deploying infrastructure, and they will see there is 5G communities, which is really deployment of 5G networks in communities, really directly linked. Then we have the operation of digital platforms, which are mainly dealing with energy and mobility, but are linked with our topic today. And then we have some synergy projects that are funding energy and mobility projects with digital infrastructure. And then there's some other programs which are directly or sharely managed by in a shared manner, managed by the stakeholders, like member states, cities, and the Commission. So one is the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility, where we have 310 billion euro in grants and 250 billion euro in loans. And you have to kind of get active now. I didn't, because it's a short presentation with only a few slides, I didn't show the whole process, but we are in a crucial moment in the process where you have to make your voice heard. The same applies in a way to the rest of the funds. So this shared indirect under the MFF, so the next multi-annual framework program of the Commission 2021-2027. The implementation is through the national authorities, but of course the feed from the cities is important. And these are the ERDF, the ESF, the Rural Development Program, etc. Now, what the legislation allows is to combine some of these programs, such as digital program that we saw on the previous slide, and then these funds, such as the ERDF, for example, they can be combined under CPR Article 21. So we are working in this direction as well. But irrespective if it can be combined formally or informally, you can always benefit from all these funds from different sites in order to supplement the funding for your digital programs, for your urban program. And I think now we are already going into the presentation of Bart, who will talk about, first, he'll present a couple of things, but first he will talk about the work of the Action Cluster, Integrated Infrastructure and Processes, overview of the initiatives, and more specifically of the urban platform. Yes, Bart.
All right. Thank you so much, Sept, for setting the stage. Good morning, all. My name is Bart Delethauer, president of the OGC, and as Sept indicated, coordinator of the Espresso project that I'll talk about later. But now here in the capacity of the EIP-SCC on the Integrated Infrastructure and Processes Action Cluster. And so for those who are not familiar with the Action Cluster, it started off with two initiatives. That was the Urban Data Platform and the humble Lamppost. Recently, two initiatives joined, that is geospatial cities or space for cities, and the small giants. As Sept indicated before, is within EIP-SCC, as we're working on the urban data platform and on other technologies, is that we follow the pace of what's happening in the world from a technological point of view, but also other point of views. And so, AI and machine learning are not new. They're here, and they're here to stay. And so we better make sure that they fit in the initiatives that we do. With COVID, we've learned that we have to go digital. That's absolutely something that we've seen. I heard stories where folks were still faxing data around on some cases. And so the digital transformation definitely needs to happen. Smart resilience, urban asset management, how do we align with the sustainable development goals for smart urban and the other sustainable development goals? Urban innovation, digital twins, as Sept indicated earlier, and others. And so we're eager to learn from you what other things that we should be looking at. So let's dive a little bit, not that much though. Okay, thanks. I think I have a Prodeo mover of my slides, which is good. I don't know if it's Prodeo, let's see. And that is on the Urban Data Platform initiative that has been going for a while, and that has produced some great outputs, various guides that I definitely encourage you to read. What we have is two initiatives joining, with the Urban Data Platform now aligned with Living in EU. Joint Boost Sustain, that is an alignment in DG Connect and the EIP-SCC on the Urban Data Platform, where we seek mayors to sign up to this declaration, and not just to sign up and then on to the next thing, I'll forget what I signed. We really want to hold them accountable so that they commit to investment and that they commit into time in this one, and so that's really important. There's joint works on business models and financing of the urban data platforms that do, the urban data platforms are the foundation of any smart city initiative. So let's make sure that we give them that limelight so that we don't end up with yet another silo solution. I'll get to that in a minute. If we then look at the the humble Lamppost, which was a very concrete implementation and very tangible of what a city can do when it's time to refresh public lighting. And it's not just public lighting; there's plenty more that infrastructure can do. Compare it with Legos. Put these Legos on top of each other and combine them so that you get a lamppost that can be smart and that can collaborate with the environment. So those were the two existing ones. One that was recently added as president of the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium. Needless to say that I have a weak heart for this one. I very much like it, and that is Space for Cities, run by Urbis. Grazia Fiore is your contact, and I believe she's amongst the crowd here today. So hi, Grazia, if you see me. And that really is, how do we bring Earth observation closer to cities? It's absolutely an opportunity to get to that data and intelligence. And so highly encourage everyone, if there's an interest in this, to contact Grazia on the email address that you have here below. To say I'm happy to help as well, Grazia. So small giants. Most of us actually in Europe live in cities with a population from 30 to 300,000, which worldwide is considered small cities. And the smaller cities are the ones that are nimble. They can move fast. They can actually innovate in a much faster way than the largest cities. And so what we're doing in the Small Giants Initiative really is to align small and medium cities to a bigger network and to stimulate projects, small matters, and where you can make an impact. So here the contact is Trevor Gibson. For this one. So understanding that we're limited on time, let me move to Espresso, which was part of the initial or the first initiative that I talked about, which was the Urban Data Platform. And so Espresso looked at what is a reference architecture for the urban platform. Quick word before we dive into it. EIP-SCC, if you look at the initiative, I'm a big fan, needless to say. And that is because the Commission is using its convening power to bring together the demand side and the supply side. So folks that have the issue and then the ones that can resolve the issue, and bring them together on neutral grounds. For me, the brilliant part in this is that they wanted to have this based on standards. If you're unfamiliar with the term standards, there's a bunch of folks that agree to do something in a similar way. And why is that? Is that otherwise, if you don't do it on a standards base, what you'll get is data sets that you cannot combine, is what they call non-interoperable. And a smart city for me is a city that can combine data that was not meant for each other. And plenty on that also from the other speakers. So it is important here, vital, that we use mechanisms that were established on a consensus basis and blessed by a standards developing organization. So about Espresso itself, we were 16 in total. Those were my cats to herd. We had 4 standard developing organizations on board: Dean out of Germany, EIPSCC on telecommunication in Europe, OGC, the geospatial folks, and then BSI on the BIM side. And we had 2 cities, Rotterdam and Tartu, where we could deploy very small scale elements of that urban platform. And so that led us to develop a concept of an urban platform. it had to be based on, as I said earlier, interoperability was key, so that you don't get any market or vendor lock-in. In other words, another version of that is that you're vendor agnostic. Not prescribing any solutions or technology, had to be modular. We didn't start from scratch. We actually took input from the organizations you see here on the slide, and we provided that input, or what we added on top of it, back to these organizations. In a nutshell, what it came down to was this one. Again, here's that Lego reference, where at the bottom side, you see the various Lego blocks that you put onto your data lake. Data lake then makes that data available to the solutions on top, with which you then can build these fantastic creations like we know on in Lego. It is based on two principles. One is MIM, the minimum interoperability mechanism, which is, don't try to boil the ocean. Do something before everything. Don't go for grand design. MIM for me stands for, that's minimum stuff. Don't try to do everything at once. Go for these minimum things. And we'll hear Martin Brinskov talk about them, because they are originally an OASC principle that we gladly took over. The other one is PPI, pivotal points of interoperability. What that translates into is use the well-known standards that have been around for a while and that have large adoption, and that folks know. And so combine MIM with PPI, and then you can have your Lego board. Espresso was a project that we ran for 2 years. I absolutely wanted it to continue, and that's what we're doing. And so within the OGC, we pulled it forward into Skira, which is, again, we're working on that reference implementation. And then secondly is the last travel I did in 2020 was to Japan. And that's where a bunch of organizations got together under the leadership of AIST in Japan, and taking that urban platform and moving it forward. And that's where we have worldwide participation now. From NIST, AIST, IEC, and ISO, OASC, OGC, Fiber, TM Forum coming together and providing more elements for the building blocks for the urban platform. And so, I think it's important that that urban platform is there, and that provides the building block for the smart city initiatives. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sept, and happy to take questions later on. That is actually me. Here I am, introducing myself. So I talked about the OGC. My name is Martin Elathauer, as said. Who is the OGC? Well, we are the location folks. We're an active not-for-profit organization worldwide, stretching across the globe, providing thought leadership and innovation for interoperable solutions and consensus-based open standards. Our mission is to make location information, also known as geospatial, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, also known as the FAIR principles. Who are our members? Well, we have a very engaged community that stretches commercial and business, government organization, academia, and as you can see, big names in the industry, but also smaller ones, disruptors, the like, that come to the OGC to sit around the table and agree on how they want to share location information, which is an essential part of a smart city initiative. Something happens somewhere at some time, so it's that location and time aspect that we care about. Who do we work with? Important here for you to note is that we do not live on an island as the OGC. We work together very closely with organizations that you can see here on screen. I name a couple: W3C, JRC, Building Smarts, ISO and JTC1, and that is to avoid competing standards, the last thing we want. And so heavy collaboration with SDOs and initiatives. We saw Eurisi on EO and cities. So actively support any initiatives on that end. And then, just again on how important location is, we've been beaten to death with the numbers on COVID-19. I can't stand them anymore. But they had one thing in common, is that we're very location aware, and that we've seen them on maps. And again, it's that combining data. That is how we're going to get out of COVID. Is a vaccine and combining data and see, where does it come from? How do we mitigate? How do we get out of this? And so it's very location aware. Thanks to the OGC standards, we were able to get to the bottom and present them on maps. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Martin.
Thank you, Bart. Martin, you can jump in. Martin is the chairman of the Open and Agile Smart Cities. Also is leading the technical group of the Living in EU initiative and many other standardization initiatives. The Synchronicity project, he was the project coordinator. So he can tell you all about all these things. Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you very much, Sept. I'm trying to get out of the sun here, which is unusual for a person in Denmark, where I'm located. Now, thanks for the invitation to join here. And I think, Bart, your introduction of these principles of how do we get a lot of things done without doing everything at once is very much my cue. So yes, I chair an organization called Open Agile Smart Cities. I'm just going to see if I can move the slide here. And since the context is here, the COVID-19 situation, maybe allow me to make a link to the general issues that you present, Bart, and then maybe come down to what are the next steps as we see it. Just for those who don't know, the Open Agile Smart Cities network, it's a global network born in Europe and very much out of the concerns from the local level, so local administration, municipalities, regions, and so on, in trying to get these silos somehow working together when it comes to data interoperability. It's a pretty tricky thing to do because you have to somehow fit that to local priorities, local politics. So while you can see how this is happening in Silicon Valley with the big platforms that we all use, you can see it working on a state level in China. Actually, when we have a quite powerful local democracy going, which is an entirely good thing, as you said, but most of us live in smaller communities, actually. How do we then get the best of both worlds? And that's what OASC does on a very technical basis. We leave the standardization to many more, including OGC. So this is more a forum where we can find out, so what do we actually have in common? So yes, it is global, currently 155 cities. We had South Korea joining last week, so that's very nice. And we see it's very much those who are not in the US or in China that have the feel for this need for alignment, which certainly doesn't happen within the standards world by itself. I think you said that very well, Bart. So how can we get this interoperability to get market, but also the impact that we want? That's what we work on. And it's clear, I think, already by now, I mean, the corona situation has somehow become normal, which is in a way interesting and perhaps a little bit frightening. But it has also put to the forefront some of the issues around digitalization, which were very difficult to formulate in politically reasonable terms before. We could talk about climate change. We could talk about the need to transform mobility. We could certainly talk about, a digital single market. But it stayed somehow on the surface. It was not changing the core of our services. I think what COVID-19 and Corona has brought very visibly now is that now we're changing the core. we're changing the core in how we deliver service and impact for our citizens. And that is both on the environmental side, on the social side, on the economic side. So COVID-19 has brought that urgency around. Climate is still there, and the mobility challenges and so on are still there, but somehow this just sped everything up. So perhaps we can see a silver lining, something positive in the challenges. So what is it, those principles that we need to somehow unfold technically as well as organization-wise? Well, Europe has the citizen first, and not as an individualistic approach, but institutionalizing service delivery around citizens. So that approach has actually had somehow a renaissance when we put these systems out. So not seeing the citizen as a consumer, but a citizen as a citizen as part of something. So these concentric circles. So that is one thing that we are trying to flesh out with mechanisms and larger platforms around that. And others, including Ramon from Valencia and EIP-SCC, will come back to that. Then the urgency for real-time response. I mean, before that was kind of a nice to have. You could also always wait on the quarterly or the annual report, but actually, no, you can't. And when you have this experience, what it is like to have real-time information about what's happening in your community as a regulator, as an administrator, as a citizen, as a business, you of course don't want to go back to a situation where you could not do that. So that has changed. Then, of course, the governance structures around data. So who controls these flow? We know that the most valuable companies in the world are structured around data, those who are not about oil. but it's very clear that there's very powerful structures around this. And this is why we can also see the European data strategy, and we now have the outline of a Digital Services Act, something about artificial intelligence, so on, really becoming prominent, but not just as a nice philosophical exercise, but as infrastructure. And as Bart, you said, you cannot boil the ocean, but at the same time, this touches everything. So how do we do this? Of course, we divide and conquer, but when the pieces are put together, they should work. So this is the last part. How do we have a lot of actors, a lot of public procurement, which is a very, very large part of the economy? How do we have that work in synchrony, if you will, towards some common goal without micromanaging all these elements? And there's now, I think, some pieces we can see that work. So you mentioned in the beginning, Sept, Synchronicity, which I was very happy to coordinate and lead, which was a large-scale pilot where we put these Lego bricks, if you will, Bart, out in 20 cities around Europe and actually beyond, in Korea and other places. Rolling out in 6 months 50 services in all kinds of sectors, so mobility or energy management, green roofs, and so on. So that to validate how far are we in terms of technical maturity, and with the support of very different providers. So we now have good validation points for that. So I'm just going to jump a little bit in the slides here. So this is what you referred to about the minimal interoperability mechanisms. It's well-known stuff. So it's how do you discover data, how do you understand data, and how do you negotiate the terms on which you can use them. And so I would not say about that you have an easy time in the geospatial, but actually the spatial data is probably the most mature in terms of standardization with the Inspire directive and so on. But also, I mean, in food safety, there's very, very good understanding of the life cycle of data and reporting and governance of this. But it's not really put together. So how can we, in a lightweight way, understand data as it appears in our lives, in our businesses, and in the way we deliver service? So that's what the MIMs are about. And OSC is essentially governing the evolution of these MIMs. So what came out of Synchronicity was a good understanding of what we can do. I'm going to be physical here. There's a guide, quite easy for both cities, national governments, tech providers. You can look it up for the next step. And things like Synchronicity was for us a fairly large effort, but now we're pooling the efforts. So from Espresso, from all the Lighthouse learning. So Albert will update you on that. Sorry for the black background, but it's this livingin.eu initiative, also mentioned by Bart, putting all of these learnings, if you will, together. So it has 5 commitments: financial, technical, legal, something about skills, and then how do we monitor and measure, so KPIs. And we are seeing now a quite robust understanding that these are actually the aspects that we need to address. And from OAC side, we are focusing on the technical aspects, so how we bring the established mechanisms together and form a usable set of mechanisms there. And those of you who are from cities, please see if your mayor can sign up. We need good support for this, because actually it's this kind of communities coming together that cannot just be orchestrated from top down with a directive or with a big company saying, oh, then we all use our standard. You all know the web browser wars, and we would actually like to avoid something like that the internet turns its ugly side on communities, because that's the difference between the digital only, if you will, and then when data takes place, when it becomes not just something we can shut off, but actually something we more or less live in, our roads, our healthcare systems, our energy systems, our daily interactions. It's different. So I think what we are seeing now, accentuated by COVID-19, is this shift, which is not a transition, it's a transformation of how we think about infrastructuring our lives. So I think I will more or less leave it there. Very happy to take the discussion with the colleagues here and with questions from you on the floor. But just one last thought. I think we have a unique moment where actually things that are happening locally, we will hear from Ramon, things that are happening on the regional, member state, national level, in EU and across the world, we have really a window of opportunity where we can agree. While the geopolitical situation, the techno-political situation is very complex, I think we can actually agree very much in the vein that you laid out, Bart. We can agree on some core fundamentals. Then we can disagree around them. We can do business and compete on top of them. We can organize differently, but we can have a common ground. And I think that's what the next level should be. These big investments that we are doing around the climate, around the economy, should somehow have a core common ground together. So that's really encouraging, actually, I find. So I'm very happy also to see the upcoming programs from the European Commission and the services being laid out now. So thank you.
Thanks, Martin. For the questions, again, I'll repeat, as I said, after the presentation of Bart, let's take them after. Here we have the nice tool in the system where there is the question and answer part. So you can already type your questions, not to forget them if you have questions for a certain presentation. So this facilitates our discussion for afterwards. And I think now when the presentation comes, is Ramon, okay. So yeah, then Ramon Ferry from the Chief Smart City Officer in the city of Valencia, who will present to us U4SCC and the work of Valencia and their plans for the architecture of OECD, if I'm not mistaken. Ramon, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the organization and Sept to invite Valencia to participate in this session of digital transition of cities and communities. I'm Ramon Ferri. I've been working on managing IT projects in the last 20 years, and I have the responsibility on IT strategy in my city in the last 12 years. So my presentation is going to focus on describe how we have done this digital transition in Valencia. Secondly, a technology overview of what we have in place already. Thirdly, how we have checked our evolution to a smart city, mainly through sharing, cooperating, and comparing with other cities. To finalize with a new activity regarding city platform, we want to invite you to participate. So in our case, digital transition comes mainly from a PDCA process to respond to the complex challenges that Valencia has in the last decade. This process began with the publication of national law on that granted electronic rights to citizens, and the subsequent commitment of the city to comply with them. This challenge represents a paradigm shift in the development of standard are corporative and enabling electronic tools for administrative management from start to finish. So we develop a serious plan, and the fact of carrying out this serious plan offers us the vision that it was impossible to tackle all these things to do in less than 5 years. And at the end of these 5 years, we were one of the main first cities to have a complete electronic management of files of all the areas of the entire administrative cycle. This first plan was developed with our own budget of about 3 million euros, and we obtained external financing from European and national financing for an estimated of 1.5 million euros. Since 2014, we have been generating more than 200,000 records by year and more than 800,000 digitally signed documents per year. When we were just finalizing the first plan, we received another political commitment to be a smart and sustainable city. Digitally speaking, that implies to create a new digital infrastructure for non-administrative city services and measure how help them in his digital transition. We identify the digital maturity level of these city services and main enablers components in the smart city plan. The project was articulated through the urban platform and project office that was public tendered on 2014. As you will see in the next slide, we have put in place an integrated set of tools, services, and city services. Again, this plan was an internal budget of 5 million, and we obtained external budget of more or less 4 million. At the end of this process, we see another commitment, city commitment on to prepare a digital agenda for Valencia. And then this was to have a new IT plan, and this IT plan was created focusing two main pillars. The first one is business continuity in terms of architecture, in terms of security, and in terms of help desk. And then the other one was in terms of business alignment related to provide solutions and services for the main actors, the citizen, the main city, the service of the city, and the cooperation with other cities. Now we are in the progress of this plan, and we have also, again, an internal budget of 4 million, and then we have obtained until now external budget from the national government of 2.5 million. Then we are currently helping the responsible for innovation and urban agenda to specify their strategies and missions. So we are warming up to develop a new IT strategy for 2030, where sustainable and innovation developments converge. So the next slide is represented the high-level view of the current IT situation in Valencia, obviously from a conceptual level. So we start making a service-oriented architecture with 4 main projects and applications. Around that, all the IT was created. Then the first one was consolidated what we call the city databases that are citizen, territory, and organization. These databases were in the verticals of the administration, and then we consolidated in one unique place where we have an AP layer to be used for the rest of the information systems. At the same time, we consolidate the geospatial information in our geographical information systems that we have until now more than 500,000 actives geolocalized and more than 1,500 civil servants working on the processes based on the information they have in our geographical information systems. The other part is the integral platform of electronic administration that has a complete record management in all the areas and all cycles, even the city government bodies, and a set of enabler tools for electronic administration, for document authentication, digitalization, electronic signature holder, electronic procedure catalog, to be used by the rest of administrative departmental information systems. The last but not least is the urban data platform that it comprises the IoT gateway in order to homogenize and manage information coming from IoT. All this information comes to the main informational repository of the city, receiving also information from external and internal information systems through our integration basis. Real-time information is managed with the context broker, which gives us possibility to provide multi-domain automated solutions. All this information can be accessed from different applications and serviced through a set of APIs and business intelligence tools, which provide city service to have personalized dashboards for his situational awareness. Using this urban platform, we are deploying a number of IoT for environment, mobility, energy, which permit us consolidate and create concrete management for these city services, which previously were working with legacy systems from other contractors. In the case of administrative information system, all of them are updating from natural and visual basic environment to a service-oriented vision in Java using enablers components mentioned before. Having all these components completely integrated, all the information coming from any system can be directly to new services in the city app or new administrative procedures in the electronic side, or with new gadgets in the citizen dashboard, or new datasets in the open data portal. Another very important digital transition activity is in our smart office is that we are receiving all the technical specification documents of the public tenders, which could manage city data in any way. And we are introducing what we call smart clauses in order to describe the integration contract of this data in our ecosystem. And of course, we are dealing with the connectivity public tender in order to provide a connected city that is as useful and it's required for smart cities. Through this journey, our digital transition to be a smart and sustainable city, we have found our reason of being through three main activities. The first one is to cooperating with other cities in different networks. So we have been cooperating with our Spanish network of smart cities, where different municipal technicians have shared good and bad practices experience. We have jointly developed a technical specification and generated common criteria for example, deploying 5G in our cities. The best way we have found to see the progress of our IT developments on our real situation is to compare ourselves with other cities, an international standard with common objectives, criteria, and formulas. Thus, we have been certified in the ISO of sustainable cities and data from 225 and 228, as well as with the new recommendation of ITU on key performance indicators for sustainable smart cities to evaluate the achievement of sustainable development goals. The other important topic we have we had to cover in the field of smart cities is that of standards and normalization in our file. So smart cities need homogeneous services regardless of the operator that deploys them. For example, in the case of charging points of electric vehicles. That is why we have actively participated with the Spanish National Standardization Association in the Smart Cities Committee, and currently with the United for Smart and Sustainable City initiative. So let me give you some information concerning this new initiative. The United for Smart and Sustainable City is a UN initiative coordinated by the ITU, UNSC, and UN Habitat, and supported by other 14 UN agencies. His main goal is to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 11, make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. United for Smart and Sustainable Cities serves as a global platform to promote public policy and encourage the use of ICT to transition to smart and sustainable cities. So in this work that they have doing in these 2 years, they have a number of thematic groups in city platform, in artificial intelligence, blockchain, measure and monitor smart and sustainable cities, finance, simple ways to be smart, and the index of this initiative. And we are leading the smart platform thematic group, and then we are just starting with the scope and the working groups on this thematic group. So we are looking for cities that provide best practices in order to show the other cities how they have integrated solutions for integrated management of cities. We want to also identify the state of the art on a smart public health emergency system. And we are just looking for a new transition to a new architecture that Martin and OGC is going to lead in it. And at the end, we want to see how a looking forward scenario and how city platform could be good for cities in order to facing with health pandemics, tourism, and resilience. And that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Ramon. I think we went a bit too far in the presentation, so I think the next one should be Albert, who's a bit earlier in the presentation. So Albert Engels from the local smart city projects and City of Rotterdam. Yep, go ahead, Albert.
Yep, thank you very much, Sept, and to all the others. Welcome, my name is Albert Engels. I'm from the City of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and I'm working with the urban development cluster in Rotterdam already for some years. And as well, I'm coordinator of the Smart City project funded by the European Commission of Materialise. And for the time being, I'm the chair of the board of coordinators, which I will tell you something more about it. So that's next slide, please. Okay. With the title, of course, we are working for smart cities, but as we know, everybody has to deal with COVID. And what we have discussed earlier this year is that that resilience is, of course, very, very important, and I think a little bit underestimated in the work of smart cities. And so that we have to combine resilient and smart in a smarter way. And how to do it, that is, I think, a big question, a challenge for a lot of partners we have already discussed a lot. And I think they can help us more. And as you can see, we, as smart cities, we have now 17 projects running through Europe for 5 years. And there's a kind of a network explosion with more than 100 cities. The blue dots are the lighthouse cities who are dealing with demonstration projects, real-life demonstration projects, and the green dots are the fellow cities who are learning from the lighthouse cities and picking up the good things to express for the later stage. So I think looking for that all European projects, all European cities are combined in a big network, but of course every project has to deal with its own challenges. So that is what we have tried to do, to combine every project, to make it combined in a board of coordinators. And on the right you see the the logos of all the projects, and it's funded by the Commission, I think, for at least 400 million euros. So it's large-scale projects where we have to deal with ICT, mobility, and energy. So instead of siloed energy projects, we now have to deal with that combination of ICT together with energy and mobility, and as well working together with knowledge institutes in international settings, with cities and private partners. So that is it's far more than technology, because the technology is no, far less available, but it's more an organizational issue for how to deal with these challenges and how to make them real work in the city. So in a traditional setting, cities are not quite used to do this kind of large city projects, but I think as I'm doing this for a few years now, I think I can recommend it to everybody. Try to do this because it is very, very interesting, and I think of a valuable setting for the coming years, because COVID already shows us that the challenges are too complex to do it on your own, and most cities are sometimes inventing the wheel themselves, but with these kind of networks and of course help with almost all the others, I think it is almost a necessity to work together. And that's why instead of making a new network, we try to, our motto for this year is getting better connected, because instead of what I mentioned, of course we have a network of 100 cities, but they cannot do it on their own. So that's why we make the connections, of course, with the EIP, as we are now part of it today, and as well with who's doing that? Okay, sorry. With the SCC system, smart city information system, as well with the open Agile smart cities, and together as well with the global resilient network, formerly known as 100 resilient cities. So to combine forces, because there's so much knowledge already available, but it is as well important how to combine those these networks and the knowledge available. And this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges for the coming time, how to get to the knowledge already available and to share it within cities, because cities, because I work for the city now for almost 15 years, it is not the core business for the city to learn from other cities. But as now I know that it is important to do it as well. So I can recommend it everybody to visit us and to deal with the smart city community, because it is I think of much of the valuable information for cities as well for knowledge institutes, as well for private partners, because it is the world's too complex to do it on your own, and that is what we try to do. And of course, resilience should not be forgotten in this complex matter. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Albert. I think this slight motto about getting connected was also present in the previous presentations. And it was interesting to see something that we have known when I was looking at your map of the projects, the two colors of lead cities and follower cities. There was a clear diagonal through Europe, and the majority of the follower cities were in the southeastern part, and the majority of the lead cities were in the northern western part. It's interesting. And now we continue with Nadia Sultanova, who will talk to us about the digitalization partnership of the urban agenda for the EU, and then also about the digital and the intelligent cities challenge. Just a sec here. Nadia, go ahead.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for the very inspiring presentations. As Svet said, my name is Nadia Sultanova, and I'm from the Sofia municipality. Sofia is a city in the capital city of Bulgaria. I represent the newly formed Innovation, Digitalization and Economic Development unit. The unit was formed just the beginning of this year, and it was more or less a result of a digital strategy for digital transformation that we developed. And I will talk about this a little bit later as well. I was asked here to present 3 projects that Sofia currently is taking place in. I understand I only have 4 minutes, so I'll be very, very quick. The first project that I will tell you a little bit about is the digital transition, part of the urban agenda for the EU. The project actually started in 2017, involved 6 partner cities and 6 partner states and 9 city partners. And in this one, Sofia, together with Oulu, were the coordinators. The aims of the partnership was to provide better public services, foster innovation, and create high growth business opportunities. In 2018, the partnership published an action plan, a very interesting document. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't done so far. They're focusing on data, 5G, new business models, and skills building in the larger areas of regulation, funding, and knowledge. Of course, the bigger goal of this partnership is to foster new business growth in European cities, which is pretty obvious. The work on the action plan continues. I'm not exactly sure how long, by the way, but I know it's on, and my colleagues from the municipality are still working on that. Great. The second project that I will talk about. Sorry, I clicked. I'm sorry. Svet, can you help me with the? I think I'm lost. Up. Okay, that's the one. The second project that I had pleasure of coordinating here with the team on behalf of the city of Sofia is the Digital Cities Challenge. The Digital Cities Challenge was actually a tailored program of coaching and facilitation and mentoring that we received. It lasted for 18 months. We did have regular communication with mentor cities throughout Europe. We did have experts coming here and working with us on a day-to-day basis. The goal of the Digital Cities Challenge was to help cities develop digital policies, and that was super helpful for Sofia because we did not have such policies, and we still don't do, and we need to work to develop data policy and so on. The project, the Digital Cities Challenge, included the creation of a long-term collaboration network. And again, I think maybe Svet touched upon this in the intro, but this is something the cities from our part of Europe do need a lot. And those are capabilities and opportunities that we need to work on a little bit more, a little bit better to build connections. This project, yes, indeed included a lot of networking that was very, very helpful for Sofia. There was a declaration of cooperation signed by the mayors, and actually the most important result was that 41 cities, Sofia included, developed a strategy for digital transformation. In the case of Sofia, the strategy called for making the city a market creator and linking kind of a low, not low, but like old style sectors like government, like transport, like utilities, to a very well developed and thriving ecosystem here in Sofia, ecosystem that is developing super innovative solutions. It's not developing them for cities outside Bulgaria. The strategy was adopted by the city council. It was adopted unanimously, so huge success there. And now we're working on the action plan and the roadmap use that. But if you allow me for just 1 second to take a side note and just tell you how important this was for us. This project raised the digitalization talk. It led to the creation of a first ever position for Deputy Mayor of Digitalization and a team behind it. It kind of raised the question for digitalization here in the local community. And we're very grateful for the support from the other cities, from the experts, from the commission that we received. I believe these projects that are very down to earth, very one-to-one, the way we worked, were very, very helpful, including in the way we communicated it here locally, which is not always easy. Digital Cities Challenge ended in mid-last year, mid-2019, and now, soon after, a successor project was actually announced. It's bigger in scope and longer. The project is called 100 Intelligent Cities Challenge. It's going to be 30 months long, a lot bigger. DCC was for 15 plus 25 cities. Intelligent Cities Challenge will be for 100 cities, 90 of those in the European Union and 10 outside. The mentor cities this time will also come, some of them will also come from outside of the EU, which is great. The cities will be grouped in according to strategic goals, and what we hope to achieve and what the project declared as a goal is to help us implement the strategy that we adopted. It will, of course, include trainings and mentoring and networking and everything we had before, and they just announced the marketplace for companies that offer smart city or circular economy solutions, and we'll be encouraging local companies to join in that as well. So thank you. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you very much. Sept, up to you.
Nadia, I think now we can go into the question and answer. I was looking at the tool here and I didn't see any questions in the question and answer, but we already have some questions to be asked that were already announced in the beginning of the presentation. So maybe a couple of interesting things that we need to know is what, according to you, are the hurdles in the funding of these digital solutions, in the financing, and what can be done about them? And the other one, of course, about the COVID and how the digital can help to overcome the problems that were raised by the COVID crisis. So I don't know who from the panel would like to answer first. Yeah, Martin, yeah. But you don't get the answer for the COVID because you already gave it, but you can reply for the funding.
Okay, yeah. So I think if we combine what you said, Ramon, about what you do in Valencia, this clauses that you put in all the public tenders so that you don't need a big master plan, but actually all the little actions, they contribute to a common vision. I think that is the key thing. And it's immensely complex because procurement is always done to optimize the use of taxpayers' money, and it's usually a narrow scope. But how you make that support a broad scope, and that could actually be both COVID related because it enables you to act on new things that come at you. So it's to your point, Albert, with the resilience. It is actually something we need. We need resilience. But how do we build that without coming with a big, clunky, top-down thing? I think the public procurement is the essential thing, but that then needs the building blocks, the Lego bricks that you presented, Bart. So putting it into public procurement with the actual technical building blocks there, it can be used for anything, and there will be a nice, well, there has to be support from the suppliers around. I think those are the essentials, and it goes for both the COVID, the climate, the economy, and the autonomy issues.
Thanks, Martin. Maybe Ramon can also chime in because he also had this external, internal budget. So maybe you can explain how this funding is assured and what is the thought of the future, because there was also up until 2030 on the strategy, so you have thought about it?
Yeah, I will try. First of all, I think that from a city point of view, we have a problem. I think that is only my city, but it's in the other cities. Is the own structure and the procedure for public administration budget. In our case, normally when the economy is high, then you are asking for the financial department and say you can increase your budget in X%, you know. And when the economy is down, then they put it. They say that in the same way. But what we are requiring is that the people making budgets will be smart, you know, will be more sensible, will be that budgets can take this sensitivity in order to put the money where is required, you know, because normally we have a great contracts, public tender contracts for mobility, for example, 100 euros, but we have a small budget for information systems, you know, for computing. So we have to be more sensible. And the other thing is that, as I told before, is if we create, if there's the political view that we have to create a small infrastructure, city infrastructure, in order to governance this IT with this project team, and if we are able to, I don't mind if it's in climate change or energy, or in this case in IT, and then you try to start with the process of taking all this increased service and functionality in order to take this information in this smallest infrastructure, then we will be able to progress, you know. So I think that in our case, infrastructure is not political attractive, because we are technology, we are data, and it's difficult for them to see that we have secondary great inputs for the other services, you know, and